All right. Thank you guys for being here. My name is Shira Campzano. I'm with Blackbridge Capital Partners, Director of Investor Relations. And today we have Keeley here, who is going to talk to us a little bit about capital raising, a little bit about her history. I had a nice conversation with you yesterday, and I was so happy to get to know you just a little bit more. But one of the things that she shared with me is that she has her pup, who is her baby, and he or she
Yeah, a little girl.
the
Yeah.
little girl is probably running around somewhere. So at any which point, I'd love to
Yeah.
see her.
Oh, she's back there laying on a heating pad because she's spoiled rotten. So she's comfy.
Oh, that is good.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that's what she looks like.
Oh,
Yeah, she's pretty cute. She's
I
about
love,
four pounds. Just
I
like,
love it. So cute.
thank
Such a
you.
cute face.
she is spoiled. In my next life, I want to be a puppy.
Right? She's got it made.
Yeah, that's what I want, to be a puppy, because they get the best of all worlds. They get all the love and all the affection in a good home, right? We hope that it's a good
Yes.
home.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, they have a good heart, I think. It's like they don't know anything else but to give love to you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and let Keeley introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background first, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, it's nice to meet everybody. I was going to say all y'all, but I don't know if y'all are ready for my thick Texas accent yet. If it's not obvious, I'm from Texas. I've lived here my entire life. I'm seventh generation Texan, and nobody says that unless you're from Texas. So I feel like my dad's like, you're never allowed to leave. So I grew up in Texas. I still live here, but I've been in sales for 18 years now and just absolutely love it. I left corporate in 2017. I was VP of sales, running multiple sales teams, had about 600 salespeople, and it was a wild ride and a lot of work. And I was emotionally exhausted and just couldn't do it anymore. So I left, start my own coaching firm back in 2017. And around that time, my dad was leaving the financial markets. I was a Forex and futures trader, hedge fund manager, and he's like, let's get into real estate. And so we did. So I simultaneously ran my coaching business, and then we got into real estate. And a lot of people found out that I knew sales and did a lot of sales training, and just got a lot of requests just from various mastermind groups I was involved in. Hey, can you please, teach us capital raising? Because this is a sales role. And that's really how I got involved in it. It wasn't on my radar, but it's been one of the most rewarding niches that I found my way into as a sales coach. And I just absolutely love working with business owners, syndicators, fund managers, operators, and that's my passion. You're probably going to learn a lot today that I hate typical salespeople. I'm not going to teach you all the cringy stuff that everybody hates about sales, because I'm the same way. I hated all that too. And so I found a way to climb to the peak of my career and do extremely well by being authentic, but still closing a lot of business at the same time. So I hope to give you a lot of good tips you can walk away with, implement in your next investor conversation, but also just want to have some fun too while we do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Keeley. I am excited for today. One of the things that I will share that I told you yesterday, but I was obsessively looking at her guide for LinkedIn. Like, I kept going back at it. And I will say, I feel like you give such great information and you break it down so well. And I know this is it's just something that popped in my head really right now. But when you were making it, I know you said that it was like a burst of creativity, but how was it that it like popped or was born from?
I being on LinkedIn, obviously I've been in a lot of LinkedIn challenges, and I see people that struggle writing content, getting people to engage with their content, not knowing how to raise capital on LinkedIn. And I just wanted to put something together that I thought would be helpful. I think maybe it just comes from my years of like when I did really well in sales in my family's franchise. And then when my dad sold the franchise back to corporate asked me like, hey, can you please come teach your sales process and roll it out to the entire franchise network? And so I had to document what I was doing. And so I've gotten really good over the years of like creating processes and systems and like, hey, here's step-by-step how to do something. And I like the creative, like you're never going to get an email from me that doesn't have a GIF in it. Like it's always going to be fun. There's gonna be a lot of colors because I feel like you got to enjoy while you're learning. But I got excited about it. I knew it could help a lot of people. And so I threw it together. I think I started at midnight. I'm a night owl. So I was up till like 2:30 or 3 and I couldn't wait to publish it the next morning, but I'm glad you found it helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's so the guide was actually what I found first. And then I was like, oh, who's Keeley? I want to know more about her because yeah, it was, I don't know, to me it blew me away, honestly. And so I took one of your ideas. You're like, oh, I put gifts and everything. And so I made a workshop based on a market that I'm looking at, and I added a GIF in there because I was like, this is fun. Like, why not be playful with it?
Right.
So thank you for that, because you really were my inspiration.
Oh, I love that.
So to get right into it and really, you know, make the best that we can of this time that we have together, one of my first questions really is, what do you see that is a common mistake that new syndicators or investors make, you know, when they're entering the capital raise?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's the biggest mistake that I typically see is people falling into the trap of thinking that there's a shortcut and spending a lot of money trying to find the shortcut, whether it's, you know, hiring an international company to generate, you know, 20 accredited investor leads for you every single week. It's, you know, hiring VAs to try to kind of offload your LinkedIn social media profile, spending a lot of money building a huge, you know, robust website, you know, buying content that you can put out there, and then it's crickets. If you've ever seen the movie The Field of Dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. Well, in this world, if you build it, they will not show up. Like they won't show up, even if you have the most incredible ecosystem. We have to learn sales skills. And so there's just no shortcut. This is a high ticket sale. And it's the only type of sale that I teach. It's the only thing I've ever sold in my 18 years of being in sales. It requires a conversation. And these are sometimes high six-figure transactions, and it can't be a transaction. We've got to have trust there. We've got to have the patience to let the relationship develop. And so I do see a lot of syndicators that go into this thinking that if my emails are pretty enough and I have all this really cool tech behind the scenes and all these automations and things that connect together, that I'm just going to raise, you know, capital, you know, automatically. And they struggle. And it's frustrating because I don't want people to get defeated or feel like you're doing something wrong when you're not. We all want to get to the place where we can send an email and, you know, raise $3 million in 24 hours. But to get to that place requires conversations. It requires consistent, persistent action and building relationships and really getting to know people. So I think it's just adjusting your expectations. You're building a business from the ground up and changing how you measure success and defining success in a way where it keeps you motivated to keep going, because it's the small things that you do every day that are going to lead to the multi-million-dollar raises.
Thank you. Absolutely. So it's funny you said, you mentioned relationships, and I feel like in everywhere that we've had the opportunity to be in a chat room or a part of a webinar, even like conferences, the big emphasis is on making relationships. Relationships are so important. But then we get to the point where like, okay, I need money. I need you to invest, right? And it's also like, let's cut to the chase. Here's the deal, take it. And then, you know, you have this world that is, you know, they're meant to be there to sell on. And they try to exploit that, right? That vulnerability of you needing to raise capital and thinking, well, here's some shortcuts that you can take. When the reality is we're emphasizing relationships, but then we're looking for the shortcuts. You have both.
You know, it's funny because I wrote a LinkedIn post about that a couple of days ago, and I knew it was going to tank. Like I knew it was going to perform horrible because I've done it before in an article. It's like the things you don't want to know about capital raising, but you probably should. And sure enough, the performance on it was terrible. Why? Because our ego wants the easy route. Like our ego wants to believe that there's a faster way to do this. And I'm just a big believer in like, go into this eyes wide open so you don't feel discouraged and look at everybody that's only showing you the highlight reel of their business and thinking there's something wrong with you because you didn't raise $15 million in 3 weeks like so-and-so as you're scrolling through your newsfeed. So it's the reality of it is it takes time, but you can build a really robust investor community of people that just are like referral generating machines and invest with you multiple times per year. And you get to a place where you're not worried about being able to finish out a capital raise, but it just takes time to get there. So give yourself the time to build it.
Amazing. Thank you. And so now to follow up with that question, what is maybe a mistake that you see someone who is experienced, has been in this world for a while, right? They have the experience, they're doing these things, but what's maybe a mistake that they make that you've noticed?
Yeah, I'll share one with you. Somebody reached out to me, seasoned fund managers. Well, I'll give you 2 examples, but these seasoned fund managers, they raise like 25 million a year. and reached out asking for help because they totally bombed their last raise and they couldn't figure out why. So it was, me asking a ton of questions, trying to diagnose what the issue was. And they just kind of abruptly inserted a new asset class that their investors weren't used to seeing. So they normally raise for like multifamily, ATM funds, oil and gas. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, like ER facilities. And they threw medical in there, and their investors weren't educated in that. They didn't understand the advantages of it. And so they were freaking out because they're like, normally at this point we would have, we'd be 60% raised and we have like $100,000 in soft commits. So that is one mistake that I see. It's, if you are going to put a new market in front of your investors, you've been talking about how amazing Atlanta is for, the last 8 months. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we got a deal in Nashville. It's like, well, we got to educate investors before we blindside them with something maybe they're not prepared for. So the education piece of it is big. The other one is one of the largest syndicators, I'm not going to put his name out there, but, investor community of 30 to 40,000 people reached out, asked for sales help, train his team so they can raise more capital. And they were in the habit of so many years of collecting email addresses, but not really building relationships that 35 to 40,000 people, that list of people is not producing capital like they thought it would. And I don't want y'all collecting email addresses. It doesn't matter if you have 2,000 people on your list if you're only raising $1 million. So one of my clients raised $21 million last year on a list of a little under 400 people. It's like 390 something people, which is phenomenal. But that goes to show you, like, he knows all these people and all these people are connected because they were referrals of each other. So it's not worrying about how large your list is, but how deep your relationships are inside of that list. That's what will bring the referrals in, get people that will invest with you multiple times per year. So don't chase after the vanity metrics. We want to build relationships.
Absolutely. It's that thought of quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have those quality relationships. At the end of the day, going deeper versus wider is always going to win, right?
Yes.
So I feel like you kind of touched upon my next question, which really was like, what advice would you give, new syndicators or people potentially looking for investors? So I think if you want to give us a little extra, or we can go on to the next one, it's totally fine with you.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier that made me want to give you all this tips. You said that, we build relationships with people, and we hear that all the time, right? Build relationships. But then at some point you're like, hey, you want to invest or not? We have to get to that point. So I want you to build relationships, but I want you to be intentional about how you're building relationships. And what I've noticed is when people don't feel confident from a sales skills perspective, they just kind of talk shop, if you will, every conversation and think that the relationship is getting built without any intentionality about what's being talked about, and not transitioning that over to, here's the types of people that I help, and figuring out, am I talking to somebody that has the problems that I fix? So anytime you are talking about your business, you're at a networking event. This happened, I was at one 2 days ago in Dallas, and they're like, it was a smaller one, right? So let's go around the room and everybody does their elevator pitch. And most people's elevator pitch is, use jargon words, I'm a multifamily syndicator, that focuses on class B and C, acquisitions of 150 units across the Southeast United States. We currently have 45 million under management. And everybody's like, wow, that sounds really cool, but nobody comes and talks to you afterwards because it doesn't draw them in. So when I say intentionality in how you talk about your business, explain it from a pain point perspective, because pain is what anchors people's awareness of why they should care in the first place. Nobody cares about a movie until there's a problem. Nobody cares about a conversation when you're talking to them about there's somebody that has a problem. If you can help them survive or thrive, you've got their attention. But if you can't, the brain just filters it out. It's white noise. People have so much going on. So when you describe your business instead, think about all the things that investors are telling you of why they're investing in multifamily, if that's the asset class that you're focused on. What are they tired of? What are they nervous about? What are they frustrated with? And use that as a description. So I would say instead, I own a real estate investment firm. Because if you just say I'm a real estate investor, it doesn't invite people into the conversation. They think you're a fix and flip, which fine, if you are, that's great. But if you're trying to raise capital, we need to draw people in. So I would say I own a real estate investing firm. And I typically work with, if I'm in a room full of business owners, right? That's who I work with. I typically work with successful business owners that spend a lot of time in their business. They've made great money, but they, are concerned about their investments. They're nervous about the economy. They've kind of put stuff into the stock market. It's been on a roller coaster the last couple of years. And they tell me, Keeley, I need to get a higher return. I need some more stability. And I help them achieve that through investing in real estate. But my team handles all the hard work, all the chaos, and they get to passively invest and just enjoy the returns without dealing with any of the headaches. And that is going to draw somebody in. They're like, oh, wow, she works with people that are just like me. I'm also frustrated with the stock market. I'm also concerned about the economy. And it will pique somebody's interest to want to come and talk to you. So that's what I mean by like having intentionality when you're talking to people. It's great to know them, but we've got to have the business conversation. And if you're not talking to somebody that has the problems that you fix, at least now they know what you do and can make introductions for you to somebody that you can help.
See, that's so funny that you say that, because now that I'm thinking about it, that makes more sense than kind of giving that elevator pitch, right? Because we've all learned it, we've all been taught, one way or another to kind of be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want to undertake, or this is what I have undertaken. But to actually put it in a perspective of, well, I have a firm and, I help people make passive income so that they can focus on their business rather than worry about what they're investing in. I take care of that for them. That I feel like is more inviting than being like, hey, I invested in B and C class properties. Like, I feel like they would just look at me and kind of be like, oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
I don't even know what multifamily is. Like there's so many words that are so common to us in our industry, but somebody asked me one time, if this was years ago, if it was a nonprofit. It's not on their radar. So anything that's like jargon, we got to simplify it. I would say apartment complexes, because they know what those are. That's easier.
Absolutely. It's easier for their mind to like grasp it and then like process it, right? Because I have seen in conversations with people who aren't a part of this world kind of be like, well, what is it that you do then? And then to explain to them the full process of like what a syndication is, you can sometimes see it like physically in their face that it's completely going over their head. And then you have to try to like reel them back in, kind of like, wait a second, let me explain a little further. And then by then I think you might lose them a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can find analogies that people understand, everybody's watched HGTV. Everybody knows what flipping a house is. It's been everywhere on television and our culture. So if you could simplify it that way and say, we're basically buying apartment complexes and we're flipping them, over a period of 3 to 4 years. But instead of, you having to go in and find the property and do all the hard work and manage all the headaches and the tenants, my team does that. And then we have a bunch of passive investors that just pull their funds together and we buy really big properties and, we all get to profit from it. But it's like a simplified example the first time you're meeting somebody.
All right, absolutely. Thank you. And so my follow-up question, I guess not a follow-up, it's a different question. I don't know why I said follow-up, but what would you say is like a challenge for syndicators while they're actually raising capital, while they're in that process of it? And what's one thing that possibly can help them navigate, those difficulties?
It is absolutely what goes on between your ears, because, and what I mean, mindset, right? The managing the head game when you're in the middle of a live raise. I feel like I've mastered this just from being in commission only sales for so long. It's like you could have a record month, but as soon as it's December 1st, you're starting over from scratch and you got to create your own income. And so I've had a lot of coaches, in my career that have just helped me from a mindset perspective. People can feel desperation. They can feel the transactional nature of a conversation where you're just calling them, trying to get something from them. And so the beliefs that you have about yourself will determine the actions that you take during your raise, which will ultimately give you the results. And if you go into the raise thinking like, oh my God, this is going to be really hard. I'm like super nervous. The economy is like crap right now. Are people really going to want to move money? You're not going to play full out if you have those beliefs. And when you don't play full out, you're not going to get the results. And people always think like, I got to do the actions to get the results, but there's a step before that. What do I have to believe to be true about myself to do the things I need to do, to be bold in the actions that I take, to pick up the phone and call my investors, to maintain this abundance mentality in the midst of this raise to get the results at the end of it. And when I was probably my biggest sales role started in 2010, my family bought a franchise, and it was like the whole family was on the payroll and I was the only one selling. And I was so uncomfortable and so nervous when I first started. And we had this period of like 3 days every month to generate 80% of the revenue of the business for the whole month in like this period of 3 days. And so trying to keep my head screwed on during that time was crucial. And I remember going into every conversation before I go into my office. I had an office that didn't have any windows, like closed doors. It's kind of like my war room, right? With all my notes on the board and who's in this class that I'm going to be upselling into further education. And every time before I'd go into a meeting, I'd go in there just to kind of center myself and mentally prepare and just say, I don't need this money. I don't need it. I don't even know if I can help this person, but I'm willing to have a conversation. And convincing my brain that I'm independently wealthy and everything's fine. And y'all, the family needed the money. Like, we didn't make the money, dad didn't make payroll. So it was high pressure, but learning how to manage that mindset so people never felt this desperation from me. And things just worked out. And I remember, like, I had clients that say, oh, I want to do the, $50,000 level of education. In my mind, I'm like, oh my God, you do? Like, right. But like, play it cool, act like you've been here before. Don't let us see that you're surprised by it. But it was just following my sales process, maintaining the right mindset in the midst of it. And it led to the results every single time. I came within 90% of my sales target every time. And I wasn't lowballing it. So if you're going into a raise and within your investor community, you have enough people in there that you could raise 2.5 million, then commit to it. Don't lowball, because when you lowball, you're not going to follow through with the actions required to get there. I don't know how, but I've had the opportunity to be in the circle of a billionaire. I could call him right now. He'd answer the phone. And he said something at lunch one day that I will never forget, ever. And he's starting his second, guess you call it venture. And like, without a doubt in my mind, he will be successful because his mindset, and he said it very casually. He just goes, I always win. It was very casual how he said it. He goes, I always win. I was like, that's exactly why he always wins, because he believes that. And you might be in a capital raise and you've got a week left and it's like the fourth quarter, right? And you're, 60% behind where you're supposed to be. You have to show up every day believing I'm a fourth quarter champion. Y'all know all the sports teams that somehow come back in like the last 10, 12 minutes of the game and they're behind 20 points and they win the game. You have to believe that about yourself to follow through with the actions to get the results. So before you just start picking up the phone and sending emails and talking to investors, center yourself. What do you have to believe to be true about you to follow through with the actions? For me, I don't like the word journaling because I'm not like, oh, write my diary type of girl. It's just not me. But I have this notebook. My sales coach told me this. He's like, I want you to journal. And he's like, don't roll your eyes. I'm like, I don't want to write about my feelings. That's just not me. But in my journal, he's like, I want you to write, like, who do you have to be today? What do you have to believe to be true about yourself to have the guts to take the actions to get the results? And that's really what it is. Showing up as the person you see yourself 2 years from now. What would he do today? What actions would he take? What phone calls would he make? What stages would he expect himself to be at? What tables would he demand a seat at? That version of you, he or she, right? Anybody in here that's listening to that has goals. Who does Keeley have to be today to become the version I see myself as 2 years from now? And that was the only way. When I first started selling, y'all, I'm telling you, I was scared out of my mind. I was in a whole new world I didn't understand. We got into this business because my dad and brothers were financial market traders, options, futures, Forex. I knew nothing about it. I was 23 years old. And all of a sudden the family, we've gone through all these salespeople that weren't working out. We're in this family meeting. It's literally like, should we pack up our bags and move back to Dallas? Because we'd moved to Austin at the time, or like, what do we do? And my brothers were selling. And I remember he said, you've got me and Greg selling and we hate it and we're terrible at it. And you've got, God rest his soul, he said, Kobe Bryant sitting on the bench. And I was like, I was looking at the floor. I was like, please don't be looking at me. When I looked up, the whole family was looking at me. And I was so scared that I was going to fail, that I was going to fail my family, that we wouldn't be able to pay the bills. Do I have what it takes? I'm a woman in a man's world. I'm 23 years old. All the clients coming in were in their 50s and 60s. Like, what are you going to teach me? Right? Texas is very old school. Like, young whippersnapper. What do you know about the markets? Like that was all this crap that was going on in my head. But I looked at the leaderboard of the company and I looked at the guy who was number one, and he was making over $600,000 a year selling. And the annual conference was in October, and I was 2 months behind to make what's called President's Club, which is the highest level of success in the company. And I knew if I was going to get there, and most importantly, save the family business, I had to figure out, what would Adam do? How would Adam dress when he walked in that campus? How would he walk around? What was his aura, his swag that he had, being the number one sales rep in the company? He walked around that place like he owned it. And I started embodying that. Like, who does Keeley have to be today? If I'm the number one sales rep in the company, what do I have to do to get there? So whoever it is that you admire in the industry, that you look up to, the person you want to be, hopefully it's yourself, right? The version of you a year from now or 2 years from now. How does that person have to dress, act, behave? What actions would you take? And when you start showing up as that person today, you will get there. And somehow, by the grace of God, y'all, I walked that stage, President's Club, in 10 months. First woman in the history of the company. And I went on to become VP of sales, youngest executive on the team. All the success I had in my career. I'm not telling you that for you to pat me on the back. I'm telling you that anything is possible. You learn to trust yourself when you say yes to the things that terrify you. So when you get opportunities and people say, hey, I want you to join my GP team. Can you raise $1 million? And you have that pit in your stomach, right? Those nervous butterflies. To me, those nervous butterflies are like the calling to get in the arena. It's the calling, like, you're supposed to go, you're supposed to say yes to this. I know it's scary. I know you have no clue how you're going to do it, but you say yes, you commit 100%, you figure out the how. The how always figures itself out, but it's the 100% certainty that gets you there. And that's probably way more than what you were asking for.
Jahira, I love it. Oh my God.
It's
thank
mindset.
you.
It's so much of it is mindset.
No, that was amazing. Honestly, because a lot of times, mindset is a huge part of this. It's about really kind of putting yourself in not putting yourself, but believing that you are that person, right? And a lot of times we fail because of our own inside voice, that doubt that creeps in, that doubt that we feed. Instead of feeding I don't know, that there's that analogy where, like, there's two wolves in your head, the bad wolf, the good wolf, and the one that's going to win is the one that you feed. So you either feed confidence or you feed doubt. And I love that you said you have to think about the person you are 2 years from now being successful, and what would they be doing today? Because sometimes we're trying to figure out, what our daily schedules are looking at. We're juggling so much. We're just trying to really figure out what we should be doing. And maybe we just don't realize that we already know what we should be doing. We just have to, like, sit down and be honest with ourselves and be like, okay, you have to start showing up. You have to start showing up for yourself, doing the things that you have to do, because 2 years down the line, Jahira has already done this. She did it already. It's done.
Yes. And she's waiting for you to catch up and get to that point. And catching yourself too, I did this early on when I started my business, because this was a whole new arena for me. I was very successful in corporate. I took the leap to start a business with a partner. I didn't start my sales coaching firm right away. I took the leap to start a business with a partner, fell flat on my face, leveled myself financially, and thought to do I really have what it takes to do this? And, realized I couldn't look myself in the mirror every day if I went back to corporate, because I knew that was easy. I could do that. But this scared me. And there's so much self-respect that you create and develop when you do the hard stuff. It's the things we avoid in our business that are the things that move the needle. And we get really creative at avoiding those things. We're like, I should probably build out this, spreadsheet to make sure I'm prepared for this capital raise. And you spend 15 hours building out a spreadsheet to track our capital raise when we should be on the phone calling people, but that makes us uncomfortable. So we convince ourselves that we're doing things that are productive in our business. Mine was reading books. I banned myself from reading books because I'm like, I need to read another marketing book before I launch this. It's like, no, we're ready. You know what you're supposed to do. You have what it takes. You're going to figure it out as you go. And even if you have those thoughts in your head, we all deal with them. Nobody is exempt from the thoughts in our mind that tell us, like, are you really going to be enough? Are people going to listen if you show up? Are you going to raise this money? Are you going to disappoint the team that you're on? We all have those thoughts. The difference between the people that win and the people that continue to spin and stay stuck are the people that win just say, hey, I acknowledge you. Appreciate you trying to protect me. It's just survival brain. It's your brain. It's the reptilian brain. If y'all ever studied psychology centuries ago, right? We were running from saber-toothed tigers. It's probably, I don't even know, it's not centuries ago. I'm not that girl that knows history, okay? But a long time ago, our brain was created for fight or flight. And so our brain these days is so easily triggered, like, oh, that's scary. And so our brain starts trying to talk us out of it. You know, should you really be doing that? I don't know if it's the right time to raise capital. Are you really sure you can do it? Maybe you should say no, say yes to the next one. You need to read this marketing book. And all these thoughts come in our mind that make us play small in our business. And you have to recognize those as survival brain and say, hey, I appreciate you, but we're moving in this direction. And you can, you know, get in the back seat. I'm a put your seatbelt on, but I'm driving the car this way, because everybody deals with it. And every new level of your business, you're going to deal with imposter syndrome. You're going to feel like, am I really cut out for this? Like, who am I to be on this team and raising all this money? Who am I to have this goal of, you know, being worth this much money, when they could go invest with fill in the blank, right? All the big syndicators out there that we think of. You're going to deal with imposter syndrome at every new level of your business, because you're pushing to the next level and you're not there yet. So recognizing it as, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just my brain trying to protect me. Appreciate you. But writing down, here's what I choose to believe about myself today. These are the actions I'm going to take. It's moving forward, taking the action despite what's going on in your head.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be taking that into account, because I know myself, I've had imposter syndrome like for the longest time ever. And the first moment that I kind of overcame that was when I decided that I would just take a job that I absolutely thought like I would never be doing, and I'm doing it now today. I got to present to like 100 kids today in total, probably a little bit more. And I would have never in 1,000 years, 2 years ago, been doing that, because I would have been deadly afraid to be in front of those kids. Even though they're children, I would still be afraid to talk in front of those children. But I'm doing it now. So I'm taking more of that into my own experience and then pushing along. 2 years from now, I'll be talking to you again and be like, hey, I did it. That's what you told me. I did it.
I love it.
So do you mind providing some examples of successful capital campaigns that you've been involved with, and kind of like what those key factors were that contributed to the success?
Yeah, I can give you a great example. So, you know, I've started raising private money in 2014 for a bond fund, option fund, like in the financial markets. Then I moved to commercial real estate when I left corporate in 2017. And so we did multifamily. We were looking at some land projects, and we moved over to solely right now agriculture. So we build and operate vineyards in Texas. And when you look at the differences between the capital raise of when I was kind of first getting started in commercial real estate and looking at what was going on in the industry, what is everybody else doing, how do they structure their webinars, and then there was nobody to look at when it came to vineyards. I had to build it from scratch. And so I just kind of went back to what I know. And the difference between those two campaigns were like dramatically different in the amount of attention that we garnered and how much faster we were able to raise. And I'll tell you the key differences in that. I found a way to make it fun. And I know that sounds so simple, but how many of y'all have been to a boring webinar, like a boring investor webinar, and you're like, oh, here's another project. Where's it located? How many units, right? What's the business plan? And they all kind of start running together. And we found a way to make it fun and lighthearted. And in our investor webinar, we didn't call it a webinar. We called it, what was it, Vines and Wine? It was like Vines and Wine, which you can still do this. Even if you're not raising money for vineyards, you can still make it fun. It could be, multifamily and margaritas. Like, people love, this sounds crazy, people love to drink. And there's a reason why they hand you champagne when you walk in Louis Vuitton. They want you to spend money, so they give you alcohol. But it somehow creates a more casual environment. And I've got so many text messages from investors after that said that was by far the most fun investor webinar we've ever been to, because we just made it lighthearted. And we started out, we're like, all right, type in the chat, where are you from and what are you drinking? And it was just like, oh, wow, this feels different. We had music in the beginning when we started, faded the music out, right? It was just on like Spotify. It was disco music, but it gave energy to the webinar, and people were interacting in the chat. My dad, I think, wishes like he was a stand-up comedian in his past life. So he's got a lot of dad jokes. And so, we're talking about the investment, but we're having a good time. And it felt like there was so much less pressure on us as a team, and our investors felt the energy of it. So whatever you can do to make your webinars more fun, lighthearted, like let them really get to know who you are if you love AC/DC, play that in the beginning before you start your webinar as people are logging in. But have something that kind of brands you, where people are like, oh man, every time I go to Kevin's webinar, like there's so much fun. Like, I just want to come hang out and see what this investment is because we always have a good time. So not taking yourself so seriously and incorporating fun into that, making that a part of your brand, because the financial world is so serious. And I think if we could make it more lighthearted, maybe people would be more interested in it.
Absolutely. I think being able to put, some creativity and some fun in this space will definitely just take it to the next level. Because I do notice that everything is very much kind of like cut and dry.
Yeah.
We're talking about numbers, we're talking about units, and how fun can you make it? It's going to all depend on you, right? It's going to depend on like what you do, how creative you can get. And
Yeah.
again,
and kind of like thinking of yourself when you're doing a webinar with your team, whoever is the most outgoing and good at like working a crowd, like think of yourself more like the MC. If you can be kind of the MC of your own webinar, maybe somebody on your team is talking, the financials and use of funds and all the things that we get in the weeds on. But having somebody else on your team that's a little bit more lighthearted and knows how to work the crowd, if you will make it more exciting for everybody. And my dad made some joke, which if anybody else was, I think like years before, we'd be like, oh my gosh, like, Dad, you shouldn't have said that. But he made some joke and nobody laughed. And so, right, I'm thinking to myself as the MC, I'm like, y'all, like you were supposed to laugh at that. I promised my mom that y'all would laugh at his jokes tonight. And then they were all like, cracking up laughing. I'm like, you didn't know that comedy was going to be a part of this investor webinar tonight. And then all of a sudden it was just like really loose and investors were fun and more people were coming on video. They didn't have their video turned off. So just finding ways to enjoy yourself in the process. What is the point of doing this if it's not fun? If we have to be so serious about it? Like there's plenty of things to be serious about. And we all have a lot going on in our lives, but why not have some joy in our business? I hired a business coach a couple years ago. I thought it was for marketing. She really taught me so many other things. You hear those stories of like, sell people what they want, give them what they need. And she totally gave me what I needed because I was so intense and serious about my business. And she was like, can you lighten up? Like can you have some more fun? Like it is possible to enjoy yourself while you're building a business. And I truly believe that that's a secret to success is the more fun you have, the more capital you can raise because you're simply enjoying the process and it makes you want to show up.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that a lot of us are so in our heads sometimes that we forget that we can have fun. I think that most of us chose this world to have a little bit more control of the way that we show up in the world, right? We necessarily don't want to keep going to maybe our W-2 and being on someone else's dime and making their dreams flourish while you're kind of just there behind the computer doing all the background work. And most of us are not happy about where we are, right? And so we chose to get involved in this type of business to have more control. But maybe we forget that we're allowed to laugh. We're allowed to have fun, right? That was us. She's right on time.
That was perfect.
I love that.
She's great with timing, always has been. But so you touched base on the presentation, so I won't even really talk about that. But how is your dad now, though? Has he gotten more funnier?
I should start documenting this. He's upset that he thinks my mom's funnier than he is, and he's always been the funny one. But my mom is like, he's like, oh, she's not funny. But my mom's the type where she doesn't know she's funny, and you just watch her. Like everybody says, she needs a reality TV show. So I think he overcompensates for being funny. We'll still give him a courtesy laugh, but he's very witty. Like he has a very witty sense of humor. So I'm grateful for him because people like that, right? It's charisma. It's what draws people to you is your energy. So we can still be really smart and talk financials and analytics and underwriting and all those things, but have charisma and let our personality show because that's what makes people want to work with you and be on a team with you. Like, man, every time I'm on a raise with Lewis, we have a good time. Like, I just love his energy. So letting yourself show up as like who you are will help your tribe find you and not trying to be who you think you're supposed to be in this space. There's enough serious people. I'm on a campaign to bring more fun to this industry.
No, I'm there with you. I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely love it. So I will open up the floor to anyone who wants to come and ask a question. I encourage you guys. Keely's amazing, as you can tell already.
Thank
So
you.
can't wait to see what you guys bring up.
Hey, hey, Keely again.
Hey.
Hey, it's Wendy. I took a bunch of notes just now, and oh my God, you're just throwing a bunch of like awesome gems out here for us who are like in investor relations and actually capital raising right now. I probably have like a whole bunch of stuff to say, but I'm gonna start off by actually just rephrasing something you mentioned earlier, which is give yourself the time and the experience. But then you also mentioned when to start recognize whenever we start getting into that analysis paralysis. So I would love a little bit more of that. Maybe if you could help some of us are kind of right in between, that we're actually now, getting into a deal and knowing that we do have the experience and knowledge, but also making sure that we don't get stuck where we are. So can you just elaborate a little bit more of like
Of course.
that transition?
Yeah, you have to, in business, you've got to find a way to be willing to start even though it's not perfect, and launch something even though it's not perfect. And I'm speaking from experience. I will get caught up in this, it needs to put more work into it, tweak this, change that. And my business coach is the one that really got me out of it. She was like, Keely, you stalling because you want things to be perfect, when in reality, it's because you're scared that it won't work. You're hurting people that need your help because you're not pulling the trigger and moving forward and doing things in your business. So you have to be willing to show up imperfect. She always said this, it made me laugh. She was like, there's no skipping the dirty diaper phase of business. And the dirty diaper phase is like, oh, I want to put on this, educational webinar, but what if only 2 people show up? There's no skipping that part. You have to start, and you can't be afraid of being seen starting small in your business. I worried about that in the beginning. What are all my, people from corporate going to think? Like I left this big deal of a job, and, now I'm like 2 likes on my post, and one of them is my mom, right? Like, what are they going to think? And you get in all your head about this stuff. And my coach was like, are you without a doubt in your mind sure that you can help people? And I'm like, yes. She goes, well, then you have to be willing to be imperfect to get it out there, because you are literally hurting people that need your help, because you're being selfish. You're so consumed with, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. So recognizing that, like, you got to go through the dirty diaper phase of business, and just being willing to kind of sit in it. Like, okay, it's like, I'm going to start out with 2 people, and then I'll have 4, and then it's going to build to 6, and it's eventually going to get there. But I'm willing to show up, especially on the days that I don't feel like it. That's when it counts. There's going to be a lot of days where you don't feel like you're ready. You don't feel like showing up. You don't feel like being seen. And that's exactly when you need to be consistent. So it's harder for some personalities that are naturally more analytical. I'm not the analytical type. I'm not great with details, but I had a big ego when I started my business, because I thought I was supposed to go from bigwig executive to knowing exactly what I was doing in business. And I was so wrong. And so I was afraid to show up unless it was absolutely perfect. And I stalled and stalled and stalled and delayed. I mean, I could be like at least 18 months ahead of where I am now, had I just gotten out of my own way and just moved forward. And most of business is just taking the next step that's in front of you, that you're not going to be able to see the next 10 steps. It's just take the next step that's in front of you. The next one will be revealed. And you're going to pivot, and it's okay to pivot and turn left or turn right, or that didn't work out. The more that you can look at things like this is a test, maybe it's a new marketing campaign you're launching, a new capital raise, and you're like, I don't know if it's going to work. Well, that's okay. It's a test. And if it doesn't work, you figure out what didn't work, and we pivot and we change. And being in business and being successful and being able to innovate and keep your creative brain turned on is the willingness to abandon something if it's not working and change strategies, and not hold on so tightly to this has to work because we spent so much time perfecting it and the market's telling you that it's not working. So I don't know if that helps or answers exactly what you're looking for, but a lot of times you know, you're supposed to move forward. You just
Right.
have to understand that you're not going to see the next 10 steps, and that's okay. It's take the next step forward. The next one will be revealed after that. You'll figure it out.
Right. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, that definitely helped. And I think it was a lot of what you said as well with mindset, and also realizing that it's almost like you have to envision and model that future quantum leap version of you to be able to like perform and continue to just put yourself in these rooms, have these conversations, and really just walk that identity.
Mhm.
So thank you. That helps so
Yes.
much. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course, you're ready. You're absolutely ready. I started acting like a VP 3 years before I was promoted. And I knew that like that, it was that boldness that got to the place where I got to that level. And it, and of course, all the imposter syndrome, and who am I to think that they would, promote me? I was literally 29 years old. My goal was to be promoted by the time I was 30. And I had all this head trash that I dealt with all the time. But I said, hey, I hear you. Thanks for trying to protect me. But I'm putting this suit on, putting these heels on. I'm walking in that office today like I'm VP of sales of this company. And it was that boldness in the action, even though I was terrified, that got me to the place where I was at. And you learn to trust yourself more, where they're like those nervous butterflies they don't make you shrink and say no. It's almost like an indication, like, okay, I'm supposed to say yes to this. And it's terrifying, but it's another, it's another notch in my belt, another tool in my toolbox, that doing something that's scary will make it easier to say yes to the next thing. And that's how we keep growing.
Awesome. Did anyone else want to step up? If you're muted, you can ask a question. Totally open for, unless you guys want to raise hands.
Yeah, I believe Carmen, I'm not sure if she's unmuted for a reason, but yeah, feel free to ask a question, Carmen. Thank you guys for being here, because I know they're in the Pacific Northwest and it's quite a bit time difference. So thank you guys for coming by. And Carmen actually posted something in the chat. She said, I would love to know what a day in the life of Keeley Hubbard looks like.
Hi, Carmen. I just saw your comment at the top. It's so good to see you. Carmen and I have become LinkedIn buds, but I just love getting to see people on Zoom. It's like LinkedIn feels like out in the wild, and this is more of a formal introduction. But gosh, what does a day in life look like? I am not very organized. Is that okay that I tell you all that? I'm not like, I've always been fly by the seat of your pants type of girl, but I am organized when it comes to time blocking. So I know that if something's going to get done, it can't go on a to-do list. It has to go on my calendar. And that's the only way that I can create space in my brain to be creative and keep working on the business and grow the business, is if I have an idea, I block out time to work on it. So that's a big one. I'm also, I'm not a morning person. I've read Hal Elrod's book, Miracle Morning. I've gone to all kinds of talks and, seminars and conferences that are like, oh, if you can win before noon, like you've tackled the day. And I've tried it and it doesn't work for me. So I don't talk to anybody before 11 a.m. That is my sacred time for myself. I know it sounds crazy. You're like, you could get so much done, before 11 a.m. But I think I burned myself out in corporate. I was traveling 22 to 23 days a month. It was a 7-day business. I had 2 phones that were always ringing. And so I'm just kind of cherishing the time that I have now and realizing that I can have a huge business and be very successful and not work as hard as I used to. Because sometimes we translate, for me to get to the next level in my life, it means I have to work more. I have to sacrifice more. I have to give up time with my family, give up time with, if you have kids, give up time with your spouse. I can't hang out with my friends anymore. And we have these beliefs because it's the hustle culture from corporate that I took into my business. And so my business coach got me out of that. And she was like, it is possible for you to make more money than you did as a VP and work way less. So my mornings are chill because it sets me up for the day. I spend some time looking at my vision board. I have this huge vision board that I keep in my closet. It's like 4.5 feet tall. I mean, it's like massive. I've got all kinds of, I look at it and I write down, who do I have to be today to do the things I need to do to become the Keeley I see myself being in 2 years. I walk my dog, like I do quiet time. I listen to music. I just sit on the patio, like I just chill. And then the rest of the day, yeah, it's crazy and it's meetings and, talking to investors. I'm running 2 businesses. It's raising capital for vineyards, operational stuff on that side. And it's my coaching business. I have corporate clients. So a lot of stuff is kind of hectic and crazy. So I protect that morning time. And I'm also a night owl. But I've gotten much better at managing my schedule now than I used to be. I don't know if that helps. I block off Fridays. I don't do anything on Fridays. Well, I go It's like shopping day and lunch with my friends. Because again, y'all, I've proved to myself, like, I don't have to work from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day to have the success that I want to have. So I found a way to, really work hard Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and still have, design my life the way I want it. And I will bring up, that's another point. It's unsolicited advice. You didn't ask for this, but I think it's important. There will be opportunities in your business that you can say yes to that could make you a ton of money. And you have to ask yourself, do I want all the things that are maybe attached to that money? So do I want to take on this project knowing that it's going to mean chaos in my life, more hours away from family? I know I'm saying the exact opposite of what I just did, but there are certain opportunities I've turned down in my business because I'm like, that doesn't align with what I want my life to feel like on a day-to-day basis. Does it feel good to you how you're living your life? Because if it feels good, you'll keep driving your business. But if you're just burning out because you're convinced yourself, the more that I do, the more success I'll have, there's some opportunities you have to say no to. So you've got to have something that anchors you in your business of what do I want my life to feel like? And I told you, I'm not a touchy-feely person. I don't like talking about feelings, but I know the vibe of what I want my life to feel like is my compass for what I say yes and no to. I was offered Google wanted me to do sales training for their door-to-door fiber optic sales team. I'm like, man, wow, I could put Google on my website. I'm like, do I really want to do I want to like be a contractor and do sales training for Google? I don't know. I don't know about that. Does it align with the vibe of how I'm living my life today? So learning like, what is your anchor on your values in your business and your life? It doesn't always have to be about the money. So that's something that has really helped me protect my mornings, protect my Fridays. And I'm just loving life the way life is right now. I don't know if that answers your question, Carmen. It's way more than you wanted. It's kind of crazy over here on a day-to-day basis, but I have fun. Just me and my dog.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Eric just put in the chat, firm believer in living a life by your design. We really are the creators of our own life. We can create our life however we really want it to be. And that's the great thing about being a human being. We're allowed to do that. Jency, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask a question.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Hey, Blackbird Capital, thank you very much for hosting this event. Like big fans, amazing. And thank you very much, Kelly, for all your advice, Now, I just want to go back to that question that Carmen asked, and I wanted to ask right now where you are where you're at because of the work that you have put behind it, right? So us starting out, would you say that, somebody starting out is a little bit different? When you first began, did you have to go through that grind? Did you have to do whatever it takes in order for you to get where you're at? Obviously the life that you were living before is not what you wanted, but is that something that you had to do in order to get where you are now? Or were you on the time schedule that you are now back then?
That's a great question. There is certainly, I don't want to call it sacrifice, but there is a element of hustle that is required if you're working a W-2 and you're starting a business. Because when I was on my way out of corporate, I was building another business behind the scenes. So when I left, it was this kind of a seamless transition. So there was a lot during that time. But what I've learned over the years is that there are a lot of times we adopt this mindset that, we're like, oh, I can only sleep 5 hours a night now instead of 6 because I got to get this done. And we don't look for the easier ways to accomplish things. And it's usually because our belief system is blocking what we're trying to get done. My business coach showed me that. She was like, she's like, why have you not launched this yet? I'm like, well, for this to work, then these other 4 things have to be in place. And this one's stuck because of these reasons. And she's just looking at me like I'm crazy, right? Because I am half the time. She's like, does it have to be that way? Like, who told you it has to work like that? So I think part of it is questioning, does it have to work like that? Or is it because somebody told you that? That's the only way they've ever done it? Is it we're creating obstacles in our business because we believe we have to do these things before we take the next step, before we join a general partnership team, before we acquire a property? Kind of goes back to what Wendy was saying, like when we, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm scared to take the next step. So I create more work for myself, convincing myself that I'm not ready yet. So yes, there is an element of grind. There's an element of hustle. I've absolutely been there. But what guides me today, in the past, I would have said yes to everything because I believed it was the only way to be successful, was say yes to every single opportunity. Where I've learned over time, like, no, I don't want to take on that contract work with Google, for example. I don't know if I want to do that real estate project. Like, does that feel good to me? And even though you're starting out, you still have the power to ask that question. You don't have to say yes to everything to get your business off the ground. I think that's really what it is not feeling like you're at the mercy of got to grab every opportunity that comes my way and burn yourself out and not have fun in the process. Does that help, Jency?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. I was gonna ask you as well, like, I don't know if you said this before or not, but I wanted to know what your why is, because your why is, I think, a really striving factor in order behind your hustle. Like, if you don't have what you have, or if you don't have what you wanted to obtain, then you're obviously like pushing, like right now, like what did your why change already because you've already achieved what you have been working for so long, or does that have something to do with it or not?
It's I love that question. And Nancy, like, you're spot on, because everything she's putting in the chat is what shifted my mindset. So when I left corporate, started a business with a partner, fell flat on my face, leveled me financially, and everything, like, I poured so much into that business, and it would like have been life-changing for my family because my siblings work so hard. I just want to like write checks and pay off their debt and like hand them $1 million, right? And hand them life insurance policies and like all this stuff to make their life easier. And for my parents too. So I don't have any kids, and I'm the only one in the family that's not in a relationship, not married. And so for me, I feel like I am the family legacy. And my mom's like, nobody put that on your shoulders, but I want it. That for me, that's what brings me joy. And if you had asked me when I was in corporate, what I thought my drivers was being significant and having certainty, which Tony Robbins talks about this a lot. So when I fell flat on my face, leveled myself financially, I went to a Tony Robbins event because that's what you do when your life's in disarray. Because I was like, should I go hire a headhunter, go back into corporate? Maybe I'm not cut out for business. And I learned so much. I went from 2018 to early 2019. I attended like 7 or 8 events. And it was just kind of like an undoing of all these beliefs that I had about myself and what I thought was important in life. Because when I was promoted to VP of sales, I have the picture, my eyes looked empty. And I remember there was this big, like all the executives were in there and this huge cake, and they surprised me. I thought I was going into a meeting, and I thought that I would feel different when I got to that place, because that was like my ultimate goal. And I learned through Tony Robbins' work that I was so seeking being significant. That's what I was after. Like, oh, if I can feel significant, I'll feel worthy. I'll feel good about my life. Like, oh, I'm a big deal. I'm a VP, like, sounds so stupid now. I'm a VP of sales by 30, right? Like, who cares? But that was what was important to me at the time. And the certainty of I have these big teams and people depend on me, and look at me, look at me, look at me. And I felt so empty. I was emotionally bankrupt. And I remember everybody left the room. They were on to their meetings. And I sat there like, is this it? I thought I would feel different. And I learned through Tony Robbins' work that you will never feel fulfilled in your life. You will always have that hole, and you will constantly feel like you're looking for something, but you just can't find it unless you're focused on growth and contribution. Constantly growing as a person, doing the things that terrify you, expanding, doing the scary stuff, going for it in your business, and giving back. And giving back in a way, like, that's my why now. I was very money motivated when I was actively selling and when I was in corporate. And the interesting thing is I'm making way more than I was in corporate. But for me, I'm just like, like, I've learned so much about myself and about money that it doesn't drive me as much as it did. What drives me is like giving lessons from my survival book to somebody else. Like to y'all tonight, if you can walk away from this with just one thing and you feel like, man, I can do this, I'm capable of this, that's what lights me up. Because we all have that. Everybody's been through a lot of crap in their life. And it's those stories and that message and that stuff that you put out there that help one person move their life forward is what makes you feel like this life is worth living. So because I don't have kids, I just have a little dog, but I have a family that I'm really close with. For me, that's what it is. It's like, how can I just make an impact on anybody that I come across? Can they walk away feeling lighter, with more hope, inspired, confidence that they can do this? That's what really drives me. And I'm proud. I'm so proud of who I am today compared to who I was. And I'm not there yet, right? This journey never ends. But it's really focusing on the money stuff will come. The money takes care of itself when you focus on serving.
So good. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Wow, again, thank you so much. A lot of that was great. I definitely feel lighter. I feel like I can take on a lot after this conversation. So I will keep everybody updated with how that goes.
Love that.
And we are at the hour, and I really want to just be respectful of everybody's time. So I appreciate everybody that was able to jump in, ask questions, and participate today. A special thank you to you, Keeley, for just being amazing. I don't know. I'm in awe right now. I'm just in awe.
Thank you.
You're definitely one of my
favorite. Look at me. All of y'all, like all of y'all have this. It's really figuring out like what makes you happy. And I promise you it will come from making other people feel happy, making other people lighter, inspiring other people, especially your investors, your teammates. Like there's so many people that you can impact in this industry, and the money will take care of itself. And I'm grateful that y'all would have me on here. Thank you so much. And for everybody being engaged. And yeah, it's been a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining. Keeley, I'll be reaching out and keeping in touch.
Awesome.
Thank you, Keeley.
Great
yes,
night.
you bet, Kevin. Great to see y'all.
No worries. Nancy said thank you so much since she's at work, so she was not able to voice that, but we'll read it out for you. No worries.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a wonderful night.
Thank
Enjoy.
you. Thank you.
Have a good night, Keeley.
Bye,
Thank you
y'all.
once again.
Much. Take care.